I don't know about you all, but when I'm watching a new trailer and the multiverse is revealed to be the narrative conceit, my eyes roll in every dimension. It didn't always used to be this way. Back before every franchise was attempting to unsuccessfully feed off itself in an Ouroboros, alternate dimensions were a fun concept. Phineas and Ferb the movie Across the Second Dimension proves as much. But after the MCU officially became a phenomenon and the multiverse specifically was introduced in 2016's Doctor Strange, it has since become unavoidable in not just modern cinema, but all of pop culture. And none other than Fortnite can demonstrate why the omnipresence of the multiverse concept isn't just a harmless trend, but at this point, a dismal creative roadblock. Is John Wick dodging bullets from Goku with Spider-Man's web slingers for any reason besides it looking cool? Well, yes, actually, because cool looking characters and a collage of references to media past and present means that Fortnite generates massive profit. I'm not arguing for this looter shooter, Lego, rhythm, battle royale, whatever game Fortnite even is at this point to suddenly become a narratively driven, deeply resonant experience. That's not what it's trying to be. But that makes it all the more obvious how the multiverse concept can be an excuse to slam together money-making icons in the same bag of cash disguised as text for maximum profit, instead of as a creative framework specifically chosen for how it supports the story at its center. Again, Fortnite isn't trying to be anything more than what it unapologetically is, and that works because it belongs to a medium where sometimes one literally doesn't need anything but fun visuals and engaging gameplay. But when the multiverse concept is applied to a more narratively dependent medium and is still used in the same overwhelmingly overtly profit-driven manner, one can start to see why modern audiences have soured to the concept. There are seemingly dozens of examples to choose from if you're looking to experience the multiverse in this more narrative-dependent framework, but the loudest exclamation of such in recent memory has undoubtedly been two texts from the same pop culture corner: Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse and Deadpool and Wolverine. Trailers, commercials, Twitter posts, and any possible capturing device that could leak an image from set gave the latter movie a firm reputation. The divisiveness was as seemingly binary as the protagonists' clashing personalities. You were either a pretentious film nerd dismissing fun who can't let people just watch a movie, or you're part of the sheeple who eat whatever slop is given to them. Okay, the reputation wasn't quite so black and white, but the extreme ends of a spectrum are often the loudest. Regardless, the film's intentions were clear. The second Wolverine shadow teased one of many promised cameos. Countless references to its alluring R rating wasn't the marketing's only simultaneous masochistic and outright genius act. The abundant fan service and promises for oogles more made the film simply feel commercially motivated from the outset, despite its insistence that Disney isn't going to be happy with this one. Leaked set photos never helped, often showing actors in front of green screens or empty planes. Once again, it seemed like CGI would win out over character, much to the dismay of many a film nerd, and at this point, even unapologetic Marvel fans first, film lovers second. The studio has seen a decent decline in popularity during their multiverse saga, and while hardly being threatened financially, it's safe to say Marvel has been a little less popular around town. Meaning, cash money is still the goal, and pleasing the fans is a must, regardless of the narrative or creative sacrifices that have to be made. The result? A recent casting announcement that brings back the MCU fans' holy ghost as Doctor Doom, a decision that is seemingly antithetical to every aspect of the character that makes them interesting in their source material, alongside the prime example of defanged dissent that is Deadpool and Wolverine. The film attempts to be different in a way that ends up homogenizing itself. By using the multiverse's affordances as cheaply and disposable as possible for easy crowd pleasing, it seems as though the film has failed to match even its own silly standards that, based on the marketing, was about a foot above sea level. In its desperate attempts to satisfy its core audience, it seems as though the Ouroboros has eaten itself. Deadpool and Wolverine ended up feeling like a disorganized, homogeneous mess lacking creativity or originality in any cinematic component, doomed to monotony from its commitment to being anything but. And I don't mean for that to sound overly negative. I want to like these movies, but even when trying to meet the film where it's at, even when expecting nothing more than a good time, I was still disappointed by the unfulfilled potential left on the sandy ground that makes up the majority of Deadpool and Wolverine settings. In fact, I was shocked at just how much of a visual bore this film turned out to be, which raises the first comparison to, in my eyes, a much more successful multiverse story. Despite being able to visit any location, either made up or anchored to reality, Deadpool and Wolverine settles on a forest, a single block of New York, and a literal beige desert as its most dominant settings. The most exciting spot the film visits is the TVA, here presented as two rooms with the same architecture and color palette we've seen in multiple seasons of TV and a few films at this point. The obvious argument for this is the narrative justification. It's not a desert, it's the void. How exciting could it be? It's supposed to be the garbage dimension. Cool. Then make the garbage look interesting. How about something similar to the still drab but absolutely awe-inspiring by comparison iteration seen in the locale's first reveal? There isn't an excuse for horizon line to be middle of the frame with the sky and ground the same murky gray and for that to be called cinematic. I'll admit, there is a single montage where Deadpool travels through various dimensions to find different Wolverines, with such exciting sights including a bar, an empty warehouse, hell, another bar, and an alley. Nice. Remember Everything Everywhere All at Once? The movie that cost just about $180 million less than this one? Think about all the amazing multiverse related situations that took place in a myriad of exciting locations that would change the visual language, costume design, dialogue, color palette, and more depending on the current setting. The excuse for a boring multiverse film isn't a narrative one, or that it's too difficult to realize the premise's full potential because it's in live action. The excuse is difficulty, effort, time. You know what the Spider-Verse team embraced? All three. Marvel is one of hundreds of the biggest companies that punish their employees for making a 5-year movie in only 2 years with dismal pay and fatal working hours. But the Spider-Verse production is famously laborious. And while the second film's production has been reported to be rushed and similarly harmful towards its workers, which is utterly inexcusable, it was also just as, if not more, impassioned. There are unique locations abound. Even the equivalent Bad Dimension has a distinct look that, oh yeah, is also just the coolest aesthetic I've ever seen. And as we'll come to realize is the most significant element for the Spider-Verse film's successes, the environments and cinematography also have narrative significance. In a dimension where Miles is utterly lost and on the run, lightning and rain mimic the color of his suits, and its inverse. When Gwen and her dad finally speak, the background smears under their tears. Meanwhile, Deadpool's attempts at exciting cinematography is a visual language dominated by medium close-ups, blocking that can only come from direction as banal as, no, you have to act excited over there, and a handheld camera that just screams run and gun for a film that had all the resources in the world. The movie's attempt at an awe-inspiring shot is the massive wide near the film's midpoint, where we see, I kid you not, Deadpool and Wolverine's car drive from one desert plain across a path to another beige expanse. Can't see that in our dimension. What is also strangely repetitive is the visual humor, or lack thereof. Besides a close-up hit to the balls, there is very little visual playfulness happening in a film where the lead can literally grab the camera. While doing so at one point, it's downplayed by the punchline being a reference to external IP and production company ownership shenanigans. Hilarious. Lastly, the visual action is detrimentally consistent. Hope you enjoy whip pans and speed ramps. There's a lot of them. However, the problem here isn't really the lacking visual innovation, but the fact that this same action is applied to every character, which reveals just how one-note the film's hyped cameos really are. There are a handful of cool faces that appear, but honestly, less than I expected. I don't know, maybe having nearly the entire cast spoiled and half the film's plot leaked online, with the expectation of there being a ton of cameos, made some appearances less shocking than others. Disappointingly, most of the cameos fight with the balls-first approach that Deadpool does, making for an uninterrupted visual style and a similarly homogeneous cast of heroes in terms of fighting. Again, what doesn't help is the complete lack of narrative connection, which uses the multiverse simply as an excuse to have fan favorites fight in fabled cage matches. Deadpool quite literally says, "I'm going to fight you now," and speaks directly to the fans on multiple occasions on how what is about to transpire is completely, utterly for their consumption and nothing more. Again, in a less narratively dependent medium like video games, these fights could still be entertaining because there would be engagement through a level of interaction, but just watching very similar characters perform essentially the same move in an underdeveloped visual style is not nearly as engaging. This is how Deadpool and Wolverine feels greatest at its multiverse utilization, as when even measuring the film by its promised standards, it seemingly fails to live up to its own expected hilarity or originality in character and visuals. Spider-Verse, on the other hand, doesn't have a single frame that isn't taking advantage of everything the premise affords. Okay, maybe not this one, but the idea is as clear as this still. Spider-Verse delights in the multiverse, but not haphazardly. I still remember exact lines from minor blink and you'll miss it cameos. My theater was absolutely rioting at LEGO Spider-Man being, quote, the best of them. Peter parked car is one of the greatest gags I think I've ever heard in my life, and the sheer amount of unique looking spider people that are in a single scene is oftentimes breathtaking. All of this, and even the new side characters, have become instant staples in pop culture. Unlike Deadpool's crew, these spider people also fight like their own distinct characters. While Miles is free-flowing, Gwen is just as graceful through the combined arts of dance and spider-fu. Meanwhile, Miguel works like a machine with the heart of an animal, violently and ruthlessly clawing to his prey more like a lion than a spider. Meaning, Spider-Verse uses the multiverse concept in an actually creative and original way. From cinematic dynamism to unique settings, from innovative situations to creative fighting flair, the multiverse is an excuse for talented artists to indulge in a passion in Spider-Verse, whereas it's an excuse for Disney to milk audiences in Deadpool and Wolverine. But the underlying through line that most distinguishes these two films' success with the multiverse is the level of narrative and thematic significance the concept has to what's actually happening on screen. Thinking back to Deadpool and Wolverine, I would argue the lead doesn't really have an arc at all. The film sets up Deadpool as having to learn to accept himself and those around him, to be a superhero for the right reasons instead of just for validation. This is explicitly said by Happy Hogan multiple times in one of the opening scenes, so hopefully I didn't mess that interpretation up. But from the outset, Deadpool also explicitly says he's fighting to save his universe. The film pretty quickly forgets about his dream of joining the Avengers, and there was never really a doubt in my mind that he was already a generally complete person as a result. Meanwhile, it is because of Miles' meaningful interactions with other iterations of Spider-Man and his travels to alternate dimensions meant to reflect his opposite that develops his character. All of this narrative work proves not just successful, but emotionally engaging. I cried so many times in Across the Spider-Verse, alongside feeling anger, excitement, joy, and everything in between. Meanwhile, I felt pretty tired watching Deadpool and Wolverine. Never very excited by the on-screen action despite how many balls were stabbed and blood sprayed on the lens. Besides the fact most of these fights take place between literally invulnerable characters, which kind of diminishes the tension of any scene, as previously stated, there are times where the fights are explicitly said to not matter to the story. If the action was engaging and unique, this could at least be something enjoyable to look at, but after a couple of fight scenes you essentially get the picture. There aren't unique settings to take advantage of, the cinematography remains unevolved, and the characters act homogeneously. How could these scenes possibly prove emotionally, narratively, or thematically resonant? Hell, even entertaining? Maybe I'm asking for too much. But then why even pretend to give Deadpool an arc at all? Why make Wolverine such a tortured character and market him as such? Why have I heard reviews saying this movie actually has heart? There was a rushed attempt at making the multiverse meaningful, but by the end of each film's respective runtime, I could hardly think of what Deadpool and Wolverine had to say, or that any of the characters were emotionally distinct in any way due to their homogenization and loose connection to an already middling narrative. When a side character is involved in Into the Spider-Verse, on the other hand, they're distinctly funny, and at times play significant roles in the story. The film obviously indulges in cameos, but never at the cost of story or theme. Characters sound different, which is a sad bare minimum that Deadpool and Wolverine still hardly manages to reach. Near the midpoint, audiences are treated to the cameos. Blade, Elektra, Channing Tatum, the true heroes of our modern day. They tell a few jokes, all flatly, and all immediately agree upon the same motivation: that they can have a legacy if they sacrifice themselves for Deadpool and Wolverine. Besides making all these characters feel undully similar, this motivation also comes off as singularly selfish, meaning the affordance of having multiple heroes via cameos that the multiverse concept provides is just simply not taken advantage of. Meanwhile, the multiverse is exactly what makes Spider-Verse such an amazing movie because of its thematic utilization of the concept. Rather than use the multiverse as other texts have, as an easy way to conglomerate pop culture's most earning iconography into a single package, Spider-Verse engages with the multiverse not just visually, but through its narrative in a way that communicated a powerful criticism of the canon and its arbitrarily dogmatic reputation. Instead of using the multiverse as a narrative contextualization for cheap cameos, Spider-Verse incorporates the concept into its very bones in a way so consistently applied throughout every narrative beat that any scene feels not only dynamically entertaining, but significant in some way to the story. While watching Deadpool and Wolverine, I tried guessing the runtime a shocking amount of times. Again, another irony. Deadpool makes a joke about the movie being too long, but it's really only 2 hours with credits. This is hardly that long of a movie, but you know what? You're not wrong, Deadpool. I felt like I was watching your film for eons because of how dull it proves itself to be from failing to make even the slightest attempt at using the multiverse concept in a creative way that tied to the narrative, characters, or themes. Instead, you've made the multiverse meaningless. Which is disappointing, because Spider-Verse's existence proved that the multiverse doesn't have to be. I know how pretentious that sounds, but I truly think Deadpool and Wolverine doesn't live up to its own standards due to its shallow implementation of the concept. Spider-Verse does the opposite, incorporating the multiverse into its visuals and narrative in a way that makes the framework feel like a necessary story device instead of a cash grab. The multiverse runs through Spider-Verse's veins, whereas Deadpool and Wolverine feels like the Fortnite of movies. Oh, sorry, they actually made that already. It's called Free Guy, starring... yeah. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.